Okay everyone, Andrig with Andrig's Aircooled technology here. This is an installation video on the Evolution 2 fan kit. I'm going to be installing on an OEM fan shroud. It works with all aftermarket fan shrouds as well, but the OEM fan shroud has the least amount of room for the fan in it. So that's why I demonstrated on that. And of course that's why I really designed for that use case, because it's the one that gives the least amount of room. So if I designed for the aftermarket fan shrouds, then it wouldn't work with an OEM fan shroud. So we don't want to do that because the internal structure is a little different inside, and so that's what we do there. So what comes in your kit? Pretty straightforward. You'll have a combination air inlet and backing plate. This example, this one is just standard alternator one with nothing special. There's options for Greenberg linkage as well, and for central mount carb. You'll get the fan, and here's the dual-sided fan that you'll get. And then this is something that's been in the works for a while. I've been wanting to eliminate, the Evolution 1 kit's been coming with this flat washer, and it requires the use of Loctite. Took me a while to find a vendor to do this, but I now have a custom spring or wave washer that is going to come with all the Evolution 2 kits, and the Evolution 1 kits will start coming with this as well. So you know, it's a really heavy duty stainless steel wave washer, so no longer will you need to use Loctite on the nut, which is great. These were a lot more expensive to make than you would think, but it's worth it to me because it makes the process of installation easier for you guys. One less thing you have to do. If you forget Loctite, things comes loose, and you know that's not a good thing. Your fan loose, right? So we have an alternator here. It can work with a generator as well. It can work with any of the aftermarket alternators. There's some like 9, 10, 11, 12 brands of aftermarket alternators out there, as I've discovered. And depending what country you're talking about, you know, there's some real oddball things. But having said that, the design of this I've changed so it doesn't care what the outside diameter of the alternator and or generator is anymore. So that's a good thing. One other thing on some of the aftermarket alternators, the shaft length on the Bosch here is the same as it's always been. The shaft length on some of the aftermarket alternators is upwards of 20 millimeters longer. Not the threaded portion, but below, right, where it's not threaded. And that will cause your fan not to be able to torque it down. It'll actually be loose. You'll be able to like wiggle it up and down. If you have that problem, contact me, and I can send you the flat washer as a spacer. I have plenty of these left over. That will, one or two of these will do the trick and move the fan up a little, you know, move the nut up without moving the placement of the fan, so that you can torque it down properly. So if you run into that, that's what that issue is. It's one of your aftermarket alternators that has that. One or two of the brands have that issue. So don't know really why they did that and what they think they were doing, but that's the way it is. So, but I do have a solution for it, and you'll be good. In fact, even if you don't contact me, if you buy just a standard set of like 20 millimeter washers, it'll work. So if you can find metric washers. So so let's start with the installation. So we've got a bare alternator off, so we took off the original fan and backing plate, and this just goes on just like the regular backing plate does, except just one piece. You don't have 3 pieces. We'll use in my case, I've got just flat washers and Nylock 6 millimeter nuts. If you have the stock OEM pieces, you'll have a wave washer with a regular 6 millimeter nut. And we just put those on, tighten them down. And again, these just should be hand tight. Don't be, you know, trying to torque these things down real hard or anything like that. One, it's unnecessary. Two, depending on how much force you actually, torque these things down to, you could actually split the back of this, right? So remember, it's a strong material, plenty strong enough for the application, no problem, but you can break it. I have seen some interesting things done where someone just really I don't know what they were thinking, but torque that thing down like crazy. Making this short video just to illustrate something that happened with a customer with the Evolution 2 fan kit. So here's an Evolution 2 fan. Here's my mock-up engine that I do airflow testing with, and I've got an alternator on there, and I've got the backing plate, the air inlet backing plate attached to the alternator without the fan, just to illustrate this. And I've got an MP aftermarket fan shroud. Now, it doesn't really matter whether it's MP or CB Performance or SCAT, they all have this same problem. Okay, this mock-up engine is even a magnesium case. So, OEM magnesium case, and I've attached the fan shroud in place. And just to illustrate, I have this put on the back of this alternator. Now alternators, these aftermarket alternators, even the Bosch alternator, they vary in diameter. These are supposed to be, the original Bosch is nominally 105 millimeters in diameter. And I say nominally because they're not really 105. They're a little under 105. But if you round it, they're better than 104.5. If you round it up, it's 105 millimeters in diameter. And of course, that's what the cradle in the alternator stand is designed for as well. And so, but aftermarket alternators, they vary in diameter a lot. None of them are, unfortunately, are larger, because actually it'd make it easier, and I'll explain in a minute, are larger than the original Bosch. Most of them are smaller in diameter. This happens to be one of the worst ones. This one is actually like 103 point something, I forget, I have the exact measurements. This is a Cooltech alternator. I bought a bunch of different alternators, measured them. A lot of them vary in terms of the shaft length and the thread length, and those can cause problems with installation, but they're minor. You can use some spacer washers, you can get over that problem. This issue can cause this air inlet to break, okay? And a lot of people just don't notice it because they just strap things down, and when you have a steel backing plate like these, they'll just kind of bend. They'll flex and bend. This will flex and bend too. And most of the time, depending on the size of your alternator and the fan shroud combination you have, most of the time it's probably okay. It'll flex a little bit, but it's not enough to cause any of these, any of these support stays here that hold this whole thing together in place. You don't want to be bending this, okay? It's not steel. It might break. I had one customer, only one so far, where it had this problem and it actually broke this. And then it ruined the fan because when it broke, the stay was sticking out into the fan shroud and the fan was hitting that. The blades of the fan and all that held up just fine, but because of that just constant hitting, it actually wallowed out, where the fan mounts. So I'm going to illustrate this for you by, I just set this without, get it lined up real nice. Just sit this on there. Not even strapped down. If you strap it down, it gets even worse. And I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to show you how misaligned the holes are to the fan shroud. And this is because of the height, the varying height. So give me a second here. I'm going to zoom in where hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And you should be able to see how far off those holes are. They're really far off. And if we look down, I hope you can see that in there. If you look down in here, right down in here, you can see the fan shroud is hitting is right up against the crankcase. And you can see it's not actually sitting down where it's supposed to be sitting down. This is one of the dimensional problems with these aftermarket fan shrouds, is these things are too low. This is too low down here. So what you get is a fan shroud that doesn't sit far enough. Then it's exacerbated by the fact that the alternator is smaller than it's supposed to be. So that's making this all sit down. Now you've got holes that don't align at all. So what I recommend you do, there's two solutions to this problem, or a combination. You can shim, you can put something underneath the alternator and shim it up, or you can trim the bottom of your fan shroud until it fits down the way it's supposed to fit down. And once it fits down the way it's supposed to, these holes will line up perfectly. They will not be, and if it's lower, that's okay, because you'll just lift up the fan shroud just a tiny, tiny bit. This does not have to be touching down there for it to seal. Remember, there's actual, let's just pull up another fan shroud. This bottom right here seals off the air, right? These areas do not have to be touching the crankcase, okay, for this to be sealed, all right, for airflow. So don't worry about trimming this. So you can trim these up, make the fan shroud sit where it's supposed to sit, so that then when this is all tightened and strapped down, you're not bending that air inlet. If you bend that air inlet, you bend it enough, it's going to break. You bend it enough, even if you bend it just a tiny, tiny bit, it might break over time, right? These things are not made to be bent, okay? So just keep that in mind when you do this installation, and you'll be fine. You won't have any problems with this setup. It's plenty strong enough. Obviously, it has to be an air inlet, so I can't just make it solid, right, for this fan. So there's only so much I can do in terms of, having that thing be strong enough. And of course the material, having it be flexible enough, right, to just deal with that far of an alignment problem. So a lot of times these problems, even with a stock fan, cause the stock fan to rub, because you're bending it, and when you bend that thing, the fan is now cockeyed in relation to the fan shroud itself. Right, because it's not sitting down far enough. So if you've ever had even problems with a stock fan rubbing, a lot of times it's this problem, okay? Now this can happen even with an OEM fan shroud, okay? It's much worse with the aftermarket fan shrouds because of the dimensional problems they have. But because the alternators also can be much smaller, you can have a misalignment even with an OEM fan shroud. So check your fan shroud. When you do this installation, check that. You should just be able to sit that alternator in there, have it nice and flat, have your fan shroud sitting there, and those holes should align. Now, once again, I said if the holes are a little lower on the fan shroud versus the backing plate, that's okay. When you put all that together, the fan shroud will just be lifted up slightly, right? But they can't be higher. If they're higher on the fan shroud than the holes are in, they should be centered nicely. If it's higher, you need to adjust that fan shroud either down or adjust your alternator up. That will prevent that thing from breaking. Okay, so the air inlet backing plate combination from breaking. We don't want that thing to break, obviously. That causes really bad problems. You're just going to have a failed cooling system, right? So I want you to keep that in mind. Look at that really closely when you do your installation before you just put everything together and slap it on there, crank down that strap, tighten it all up, and then you got this thing bent. You may not even be able to see that it's bent, but it will break eventually. So keep that in mind. And this is the other thing that comes with the kit is the mount. Couple of ways you can do this. You can put the mount on the fan by aligning things, press it into place, and then do it this way. Sometimes that's problematic because as long as your Woodruff key is in there real tight, that's a good way to do it. And then you slide the whole thing on, you're good to go. If your woodruff key is not real tight, like for whatever reason on these newer, either made in Brazil or Mexico, Bosch alternators, the woodruff keys are very loose. So they just fall out real easy. So it's actually a little bit easier to take the mount here, hold your woodruff key in place with your finger, get the mount started on there, slide the mount on there, then take the fan, line it up, press it in place, and you're good. So that's the easiest way to do it on this. You'll notice, you know, there's no need for spacers or anything like that. It'll just fit on there. And then we'll take our custom wave washer, we'll throw it in there. Then we'll take our flanged 12mm nut, stick it on there, thread it. So it's an 18mm socket. I'm using my big 1/2-inch drive stuff, mostly just because I couldn't find my 3/4 inch drive 18mm socket. I don't know where it disappeared to. But we can just hold the fan, cinch it down, like so. Kind of hand tight, but you're flattening that wave washer a bit. It's probably not 100% flattened, but it won't be until you torque it completely. But there we have it. So now we have a fully assembled, I can feel that air, fan on the alternator and or generator if that's what you're doing. So next, obviously, here's our fan shroud. We're going to just drop this into the fan shroud like so. And we'll take our 6mm screws, put them in place loosely, so make sure everything's kind of lined up the way it should be. Give yourself some space. The way I designed these, the way the screws go in place, I'll show you. I'll pick this up in a second. They are virtually exactly the same size as the washers that go on here with the, so we'll just make sure we're lined up good. And that actually helps kind of line things up real good. Once you get all 4 of those in place, we'll just tighten them down. Again, just like you would a regular backing plate. These things don't need to be overdone in terms of how tight they are. Now we've got, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like. All right, so we've got it all in place, and you can kind of see the way the screws fit with the washers. They fit like, you know, just beautifully inside. That's very precise in terms of the fit of that. So then you got a fan in there, and we can there we go. A little bit of flex in there, so with the weight of the alternator is causing it to rub slightly, but you'll want to support this by the alternator for the most part, so you don't damage anything, but fits in there beautifully. It's all tight. Now when you get ready, so you know, to put this on your engine, make sure you have your pulley on and you use the slots in the pulley to torque the nut on the back of the fan. So you get this in place on your engine. With your fan shroud in place, you just strap it all down. Make sure, again, not rubbing. It shouldn't, as long as everything's lined up and it's seated properly in the alternator stand. You won't have any problems because that'll keep the fan straight. Now, obviously, this will flex, right? So, so you want it nice and aligned straight, and then it'll fit beautifully in there. then you'll want to have your pulley in front. Hold with the pulley with a screwdriver in the slots to torque the nut on the back, right? Once everything is locked in place on your engine. And we'll torque to 30 foot-pounds and you should be good. That wave washer now will hold everything together because there's obviously that spring tension of a very thick wave washer back there. It's like a little over 2.5 millimeters thick. So very similar to the custom washer that was on the original mounting stuff of the OEM fan. So that's pretty much it in terms of installation of an Evolution 2 fan kit on any fan shroud really. If you install on an Evolution fan shroud, let me get an Evolution fan shroud. I have one over here. This is one of my Evolution fan shrouds. You can see right here. And when you install on this, the only thing that's a little different is you can't just lay the fan shroud flat because the fan actually sticks out the back just a little bit. The only reason the fan doesn't stick out the back of like a OEM doghouse fan or an aftermarket fan shroud is because they have that structure that's that points out. Mine's completely flat on the back, except it has the provisions for a velocity ring. So if you had the velocity ring installed, you could just lay it down flat and it'll sit down flat. So what you have to kind of do is kind of let kind of sit it on an edge of something, or support it with something on each side when you put it down, so you can screw this in place because the fan's going to stick out the back just a little bit. It's only about like maybe that much. That it sticks out the back. So just something to keep in mind when installing on an Evolution fan shroud. Of course, you'll get much better performance with the Evolution fan shroud too, but that's an aside. So that's it. So we're all set with putting that on the engine and torquing it in place, and you'll be good. And enjoy the product. It's a great product in terms of performance, airflow performance. Almost 29% increase in airflow in an OEM doghouse fan shroud. Much greater performance in an Evolution fan shroud, but you can see my posts on that later. So appreciate it and enjoy the fan, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.